Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 106. Well, not welcome back, but welcome to episode 106. Welcome back to Spark of the Youth podcast. I'm feeling good today. So thank you guys for listening every week. You guys are the best. I love the reposts and the sharing and the everything. You guys are awesome. And if you're new to my podcast, welcome. I've been growing in followers, but I don't know everyone, so welcome. If you haven't followed me on Instagram, it's Spark Youth Podcast, and on Facebook, it's Spark of the Youth Podcast. So follow that. And just to recap on last week, we talked about overcoming social anxiety, and I hope it helped you guys. And I hope you guys liked my breathing exercise. A couple people messaged me. I was like, oh my gosh, it was so cool, blah, blah, like it. So thank you. And this week we're going to get into building back the trust, whether it's with family members or in a relationship or friendships or anything like that. We know how that is. So we're going to talk about how to repair that. And this is not to repair it, but it's if your relationship can still be saved, because just to remember, not all of them can be repaired, fixed, saved, whatever. So these are just some tips if you feel like it would help you, but I'm not telling you this will guarantee to fix your relationship. So we're gonna get into that. So first things first, which I wanted to talk about was just, I guess, focusing on yourself first before you try to fix anything else, because you gotta remember you don't want to come at the other person, make them build up this wall and want to be defensive towards the situation. So you have to find peace with yourself first before even going about this. So before anything, you really have to forgive yourself. And I know that's kind of hard because we feel bad for a lot of things, and sometimes we blame things on ourselves. Like, for example, if somebody cheated, we kind of want to say, what wasn't I doing that made them do that, or something like that. Or if someone, talked crap about you behind your back, and then you're like, what did I do wrong? So first things first is you got to understand that it's not your fault, and you have to forgive yourself for that. An important part of the forgiveness process is definitely forgiving yourself. So when you're trying to understand a situation, we have a tendency to generate explanations for why things happen, even when they're irrational, or they can be like, what did I just say? We blame ourselves, and we tend to say, if I was a better person in some way, maybe that wouldn't have happened to me. Or if I was less gullible, or if I would have seen this coming, we think we can find the flaw and fix it, but we're not like that. And you think you can prevent these things from happening again, but you just can't, because it's really what the other person's going to do. We might be able to prevent things from happening again, but it's never for sure. Self-forgiveness requires self-compassion and learning that even with your flaws and vulnerabilities, you still have tremendous self-worth. And you deserve to be treated well, and it's definitely important to know that the behavior of the other person was his or her choice, and it reflects who they are, not who you are, which is all a part of coming back to forgiving yourself. You can't blame everything on yourself, because then you're just going to feel like crap. And then you won't be able to wrap your head around the situation, because you're going to be thinking how you could have made it better, or what you could have done to avoid this. And you kind of have to just go in with a clear mind, clear heart, no expectations of anything. So now that we've covered that, forgiving yourself, here comes the hard part. Or I should say the harder part. forgiving the other person. Making peace with the situation, gaining control of your emotions, and staying planted, and knowing that it's out of your hands. Because if you didn't forgive the other person yet, then it's still technically in your hands. And it's still there, and it's lingering, and it's building a grudge and just getting worse. It's impossible to regain trust without first regaining control of your emotional well-being, and by finding your inner peace with the situation. I think a lot of people struggle with forgiveness because they don't want to let the other person off the hook for, their bad behavior, or, they don't get away with that so easy. That's making me look weak. A lot of us have that wall built up that if you forgive the other person, then you're weak. But it's important to realize, though, that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about your emotional freedom and your relief and your control. Learning to forgive and make peace with things that happened in the past can happen more easily when you take your focus off of the specific events that occurred and try to see the perspective of the other person as well. I know I'm definitely the type of person to put myself in the other person's shoes every time something happens. And it's a blessing and a curse, because sometimes it helps me understand a situation more, and it makes me, I can talk about it easier and I can come to the situation easier, but also putting myself in someone else's shoes kind of makes me feel like crap sometimes. But anyways, so seeing someone else's perspective can help you understand the events that occurred and make them less personal to you. It can also be easier to forgive someone when you see them as a whole person, and instead of seeing them as the situation that happened. And if you find yourself baking that anger over situation, then try to pull back and remember the good qualities that you know about the other person, and recognize that we all have flaws and we make mistakes and things happen. And trust me, I know it's hard, but that's a step you take yourself to make your situation better and to make you feel better, honestly. Next thing is, once you've forgiven yourself, forgiven the other person, made peace with your situation, and gained control of your emotions, then everything surrounding the broken trust out there, all in the open. And the only way to overcome a breakdown in trust is to be completely honest, and whatever the issue is, you both know what you're dealing with. That way, one person's not holding it in, and then they're confused about the situation because they still are wondering, well, why did you do what you did? Because the other person is not explaining themselves well, and they're hiding something, or they just don't feel comfortable putting it out there. So there's going to be that miscommunication. And a lot of people who've been betrayed by their partners or whatever, they might be tempted to hold back some of the details or anything like that. And obviously this will just make it worse and do more damage. And that'll eventually come back to bite you, which I'm pretty sure if you've been in this situation, you know. And when you're doing this, when you're putting everything out on the table, you really need both people, both partners, whatever. You both need to commit to talking through the problem in order to start working towards building the trust. It's going to be a big process, obviously, and you have to talk about how certain behaviors make the other person feel, and you have to be really open with these things. If there's an issue with trust, it's not one person's issue. It definitely becomes a relationship issue. So both of you have to be invested into it and be willing to talk about it. Next thing is, whoever broke the trust needs to apologize. I'm the type to apologize even if I didn't do something wrong, just because it makes things feel fair. And it lets the other person know that you're not being defensive about it, and you're not, coming at them strong or anything like that. You're kind of like, okay, you apologized. I appreciate it. I'm going to apologize too, because I want you to feel like, you did something wrong, but we both have our flaws, and I want to make you feel comfortable with that. That way, the other person's not like, ugh, I'm wrong here. I got to defend myself. I got to put this shield up and nobody's on my side. And you know how that goes. The apology definitely needs to be genuine though. And you can't just say sorry like, oh, I'm sorry, I know I hurt you. That's it. An apology needs to come with more so that the other person knows that you are sincere about what you're apologizing for and you know what you're apologizing for. You're not just saying sorry for BS. It definitely has to include accountability and ownership over the actions that broke the trust in the first place. Accountability and apologies only have the power to help repair the trust if they're truthful. So if you're just BSing, it's like pointless. Even if it requires, admitting to some things that might be hurtful to the other person, you still have to get it out because that's the point of putting everything out on the table. When you're approaching this apology as you or as the other person, you're gonna come to it as leaving it open for your partner to ask any questions, and you should be willing to answer that way, so the other person on the other side of the table is free to get the information they need to know, and you're definitely straight with them, and that they feel secure when they're asking you something and they know you're answering honestly. And if you're the person who's been betrayed or whatever, then you have to remember that your partner might not have all the answers. That's going to be number one right there. You might ask something and they won't answer it, and you're going to have to deal with that. Whether you get it out of them a certain way or whether you just move on from it or just bottle it up. Try to understand, at least try to understand what happened, but keep in mind that all the answers might not be knowable in a way. So you might not know everything, but trying to get it out on the table makes it a little easier. All right, and next step is making sure your partner feels understood. Not only your partner, but I think both people. So I feel like the person who was in the wrong should definitely feel understood, and the person who's trying to reach out needs to be understood. You guys both need to be understood equally. There should be no heavy-sided understanding to one or the other, because then somebody's feeling like, oh, you didn't care or whatever like that. The toughest part of rebuilding trust. Both partners need to understand the feelings of the other partner. And I know it'll definitely be tempting to defend and, go about, well, I felt like this, or, well, I blah, blah, blah. You don't want to start getting defensive. And especially as the other person is talking to the other person, whoever you are in this situation, don't make it seem all about them. So you don't want to come at them as, oh, you and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. You should come to them as, I felt this, or I felt like blah, blah, blah. You should always make it about you, because if you start talking to the other person about themselves, then they're going to say, well, how are you talking to me about me? Then they're going to get defensive, and then they're going to start just shutting you out and trying to defend themselves rather than hear you and respond to you. Some people are all about responding and not listening. So that's another step in itself, to just learn to listen better than we actually respond. Rather than being defensive, you need to set all the defensiveness aside and work at understanding the other person's perspective. And really all comes down to empathy. And depending on the situation, this could be a conversation that happens, during dinner, or one that starts and then it continues over a course of weeks because, you only have a certain amount of time to talk about it, or maybe it takes months, or maybe you need therapy and you're willing to do that. Everybody's situation is different, but the key to making sure both sides leave the conversation with an understanding of where the other person is coming from, and in the case of the person who's been betrayed, why the person did what they did. There aren't often many elements to feeling betrayed, and your partner may not feel and think the same way you would. And for those whose trust has been betrayed, it's important to realize that you definitely need to empathize with your partner as well. And I know it's hard, like I said, but you have to try, because definitely People who've broken trust are almost always operating out of some kind of pain, some kind of brokenness that they feel. And it will help if you try to understand where they're coming from and look at them as a broken person, not as somebody who's trying to hurt you. And I know it's going to be difficult to do in the moment, but it's kind of necessary for allowing those building blocks of trust to start being restacked. And the next step would be trying to change the behaviors that broke the trust in the first place. I'm not going to say definitely change the behaviors that led to break the trust, because that's not realistic, but we can try to change the behaviors. These will be different depending on the situation in which, trust was broken. For example, if you're one of those people who forgets everything, then try to set alarms for yourself, or put a sticky note around somewhere, or whatever helps you remind yourself to do something. So if you told somebody you were going to be somewhere and you're literally 30 minutes late, or you just don't show up because you're kind of a jerk, then that might mean, if you're really trying to change it, then, making a difference would be setting a reminder on your phone for a half hour, or whatever time you need to be somewhere before you need to be there. And it'll make a difference to the other person, because even if you get there, 10 minutes early or whatever, 5 minutes early, the other person will feel good that you're actually trying and you're not late. And even if you are early, they're going to be like, wow, like they actually made it there and they made it on time. It's going to make a big difference to somebody. But if you're a person that, cheated on somebody, then this might mean leaving your phone on the table faced up, or, taking the lock off, or giving your partner the access they need to your social media or anything like that. Then you have to make that step for your partner to trust you. They're definitely it's not gonna help your partner to feel better when it comes to trust if you continue to leave your phone locked and you continue to hide stuff. Or I should say, for us in our 20s, people message people on Snapchat so the messages can go away. I've seen that so many times. And no. Or maybe it might just be deleting Snapchat as a whole so your partner can trust you. I don't know. Whatever you can figure out, whatever makes the situation better for you. It could also mean restricting activities that you would probably do on a daily basis or whatever. If they make your partner feel uncomfortable, or, not going out or going out to eat with friends or whatever, because your partner feels like you're going to lie to them again and go with somebody else, And this is important, because when the trust is seriously betrayed, then the hurt person needs evidence of honesty in order to feel more reassured and secure that you're actually making a difference to change it. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a week, probably not a month, but it takes time. And honestly, you can only rebuild trust when the positive actions of your partner become consistent. So as the time passes and you see they're doing something once a week, or they're doing something twice a week, whether it's random days or they're doing something whenever, that consistency is going to definitely help out. So if you're the person, then look for that consistency in your partner. Or if you're the other person, then try to be consistent so that your partner feels comfortable and they feel more secure and they feel better. And, it makes them feel like you're actually trying. You want to show them that you're actually trying. And if they get on you, honestly, if they get on you for like whatever within the first week, then you really need to not come at them in a strong way, but tell them it's going to take a little time. I'm trying. Just give me this and that and that. Or even set a date to make a small marker. Just be like, let's check in with each other next month on the 5th or whatever. And then we'll reconnect and we'll sit down and talk, and you tell me how you're feeling and if anything I've been doing makes you feel better and stuff like that. I think relationships should definitely make time for talking and catching up and making sure the other person is good. Not just things like that, but literally just sitting down and saying, how are you feeling? How's your mental health today? Stuff like that. And asking how their month has been, or if you haven't talked in a month, but sometimes people do this weekly or anything like that. So just try to do stuff like that and recap with each other. And then I think that'll help you move forward, because if you're kind of just letting it go, you don't really know how the other person feels, and the other person can fall off of it, whatever. The next thing I'm going to talk about is discussing any other weaknesses in your relationship. So it's perfectly fine to do so. That's healthy, and that's a part of the relationship too. That goes along with, sitting down and meeting up and making sure the other person is good with everything, and, asking them, how do you feel with this or whatever. That's the perfect time to bring it up. Because in order for a relationship to truly work in the long run, well, the entire relationship needs to be evaluated, not just a situation that caused a big problem or a break in the trust, because a relationship can only be as healthy as the two people in the relationship, which is why a lot of us get help now, or we try to get help, or we look for somebody who's going to bring us that comfort and help or security or whatever. That goes along with making sure you're good before getting into a relationship, because if your mental health is complete crap, and I'm speaking from personal experience that my mental health was complete crap, and right now it's better. I know how it feels, and you kind of got to get it together before you go into a relationship, because you got to keep in mind that other person. And if you really like that other person, you won't want to damage them and hurt them and bring them into your chaos. Although we're not a burden, so don't ever feel like you're a burden to somebody. But it's nice to consider that other person. So if you're literally all over the place, just go get help. And it's okay to be in therapy. It's okay to see a psychologist or talk to somebody. Even if you have a friend that helps you out and makes you feel good, do that, as long as you're talking to someone. Now, I'm not saying that in every case it's unhealthy to get into a relationship like that, because the other person can help your mental health, honestly. I feel like if you've been doing it alone for so long, you finally get into a relationship where the other person understands you, well, then you're blessed. And I can speak for myself. I'm blessed because my person understands me, and it's a great feeling, because when your person understands you, they help you feel better, and they push you to go out when you're depressed and you don't feel like going out, you don't feel like going into the world today or tomorrow or whatever. Or even if you're anxious about something or you don't feel right in a situation, then in that case, you have a perfect partner that understands you. They're definitely going to help you out, and that's a whole nother beautiful thing. And if you have that, you're super lucky, so take care of it. And if you don't, it's okay, because everyone has someone. And if you feel like you don't have someone, then you'll find someone. And if you don't find someone, I'm here for you. I always tell everyone, I'm here for you if you guys want to vent. So back to topic. So talking about those weak areas and, fixing those things and making them better, although sometimes they're not going to get better. You got to remember that too, that not everything is fixable, but as long as you try, then there's a big difference, trying and not trying. Now, if the other person says, oh, I can't change that, I've been doing it for years, I'm not going to change now. Or if the other person's like, I don't know if I can do that, honestly, because I've just been the same way for so long, then that goes into a toxic person, which I've talked about. So that's a whole nother situation. And go back to my other podcast if you want to hear more about that. But like I was saying, you got to make sure you have some quality time together regularly. And, ask yourself, do you have regular quality time together? Does anything feel unfair in the relationship and need to be corrected? Do you tend to argue over the same problems over and over? And it's important because if you can see the evidence that the relationship as a whole is getting stronger, then you'll have more faith in the other person to be reliable, honest, and faithful. And when a relationship's not working as well overall, then the trust is definitely reduced. Whether it's something small for you or small for themselves, you lose that trust that yeah, I can't tell him that or I can't tell her that because they won't do it anyways. What does it matter? That's the kind of trust that starts to fall. But like I said, not all relationships can be fixed, and not all broken trust can be mended back together. Not all trust can be repaired. In some cases, trust is completely destroyed and can never be rebuilt. But sometimes the time required to repair damaged trust is just too much for some people to bear and to just try to do. And it ends up damaging you even more. So if that's your problem, then it might not even be worth it to try to rebuild the trust. But if you feel like you're capable and you can do that, then go for it. But it'll take some time, and definitely need to keep in mind the personalities, yours and the other person's. It can take anywhere from 6 months, 3 months, 2 years, whatever, to regain trust, depending on the situation, I guess. But if you've been working at it for several years and there's been no progress towards it, then there's your sign that it's probably best to just leave it alone, move on from the situation, and care about your mental health first before trying to fix something that's already broken. Especially if in that time that you're trying to rebuild the trust, that person breaks it again with the same situation or maybe a different situation. If you're trying your best to fix it and they literally do it again, then there's your answer. They don't care as much. And there's nothing wrong with getting help from other people. I'm not talking about bring a friend and have them pick your side or whatever. I'm talking about if you need therapy or whatever, then definitely try that if you feel like that'll help. Because sometimes relationships just need that guidance to move forward, that professional guidance, not just person to person or whatever is happening. There are professionals out there that do this and they can help you. They can make it easier for you. Trust issues can be resolved. It just takes a little bit of work. And if you're willing to put that work in, then go for it. But don't go in expecting for it to be fixed or expecting for the other person to change or expecting anything. You shouldn't expect anything. You should just keep in mind that it might not be able to be fixed, or it might. You can either have hope or you can just stay neutral. And there's nothing wrong with that. All right, so that brings me to the end of this podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it helps you out. Make peace with yourself, please, before you try and go fix a situation that you don't know if it can be fixed or not. But yeah, I hope you guys liked the episode. Follow me on Instagram at Spark Youth Podcast. Follow me on Facebook, Spark of the Youth Podcast. And tell me what you think. Let me know what you want to hear. I'm down for suggestions. I do have some stuff I want to talk about, but I'm always down for stuff you guys want to hear. I'm going to be doing some fun stuff soon. Just waiting for my people to let me know what's going on. So yeah, stay inspired. Do something great today and tomorrow and every day. It's okay not to be okay, so remember that. And again, thanks for listening, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.